Okay, Raymond, you're set.
Hi, Ms. Amy. All right. So this meeting was reconvened to open at 20 minutes after 1. Public report of action taken in closed session. No action was taken in closed. Item number 4, flag salute. Dr. Amy Smith, you did such a bang up job. Would you mind leading us again? Pretty please.
Love to do a three-peat now, I think I'm at.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Swell job. So public comment. Non-agenda items. The public, including public attending a teleconference location, are invited to address the board regarding items not listed on the agenda. No individual presentation shall be for more than 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 15 minutes. Ordinarily, board members will not respond to presentations and no action can be taken. However, the board may give direction to staff following a presentation. Please turn in the request to address the OPA Board of Directors form and submit it in order to address the Oxford Preparatory Academy Board of Directors. Do we have any comment cards?
Yes, we do have one comment card for item, I believe 6A.
Item 6A, okay. So we want to do those now prior to the agenda item?
Yes, we should.
Okay, all righty.
All right, so it is Mr. Quigley. Are you on the phone or are you on the line? If you're on the line, you can just unmute yourself. I'm actually looking for him in the participants. I don't think I see him, so we'll just give him one more minute. Mr. Quigley. Okay, if he comes in and I notice him on the participants, I'll let you know.
Do we have somebody else that we can go to and then come back to Mr. Quigley?
Nope, that was our only comment card, so we can move on.
Okie dokie. So that takes us to I closed my agenda by mistake.
Oh, I think that takes us to the actual item.
Okay, that's items for presentation.
Items for presentation.
Yes. So anybody presenting on item number 6? Oh, yes, they are. They are presenting.
Why, yes, they are. Item
Okay.
6A,
Item
let me share my screen.
Is increased on-campus learning survey results and planning from Dr. Kernan.
Okay.
And you do an awesome job, by the way, Amy, managing all these windows and shares and YouTubes and such, because all I got to do is keep the agenda up and the cameras, and I sometimes don't do that perfectly.
All right. So let me and our presentation. So recently the CDC and CDPH, the California Department of Public Health, gave some new guidance, changing the physical distancing requirements in schools. So whereas the distance between students in classrooms used to be 6 feet, they have decreased it now for the distance between students in classrooms to be 3 feet. But the distance between staff and students still needs to remain 6 feet. The distance between staff and staff needs to remain 6 feet. And then the distance when students are outside without a mask eating, like during lunchtime, also needs to remain 6 feet. But because the distance for students within a classroom has been decreased to 3 feet, it does allow schools to bring back more students for in-person learning, or possibly to increase the amount of in-person learning that schools can provide on a daily basis. And really the mandate from the state is that schools need to provide as much in-person learning as possible, or as feasible for the schools, while still making sure to adhere with the California Department of Public Health guidance. So in light of these changes, last week we put out a survey to our parents and staff, just kind of trying to gauge how parents and staff would feel about trying to increase to a full day of in-person instruction for our students who are attending on campus. And we got 1,068 parent and staff survey responses, which was a huge response. So we were very excited that so many people participated in our survey. And on this survey, about 60% stated that they would like to have full day in-person learning. And then about 40% stated that they didn't want to move to a full day of in-person learning for the end of the current school year. About 101 of our current virtual students actually responded that they would like a full day of in-person learning if given the chance as well. And then about 108 current hybrids respondents stated that they did not want a full day of in-person learning. And I believe that because of some of the limitations with space that we still have, even with the 3 foot distance, as well as the fact that we have so many students, about 50% of our students are currently 100% virtual. Part of the survey was also the fact that if we did make any type of change, it would possibly result in some schedule or teacher changes for students. And so, you know, these results are kind of with that caveat of whether people want to switch the schedule based on the fact that there could be some schedule or teacher changes. And then, so that looking at our teachers, 75% of teachers stated that they didn't want a full day in person of learning, especially if it meant changing students' schedules. Our teachers were very concerned about the impact that changing schedules for students would have on our students this late in the school year. This would occur if we did make the change with only about 8 weeks left of the school year. And that could be very disruptive to our students. And just, you know, having had so many changes throughout the school year. And I think that a lot of our parents, especially those here that stated that they didn't want a full day of in-person learning, from what I'm hearing from a lot of parents, is that it really does have to do with the fact that they really don't want to have those schedule changes for their students. So kind of looking at what some of our surrounding districts have done in response to this change and ability to have more students in a classroom. Capistrano Unified just put something out the day before yesterday or yesterday, that they are going to resume full day in-person instruction starting on April 26th. For them, that would leave about 6 weeks until the end of the school year. At first, they had stated that they were only going to allow students to switch from hybrid to virtual at this time. So this would only have impacted those students who were already hybrid. However, some of the different schools, especially the secondary schools, have now decided that they are going to let some students who are hybrid or who are currently virtual resume full day instruction as well. Saddleback Valley has also decided to resume full day in-person instruction. They have come out with a date of April 19th, about 7 weeks until the end of their school year. And they have told their parents that they are not allowing students who are not currently virtual to, or who are not currently hybrid to switch to hybrid at this point, although there may be some changes there, but I haven't heard of any yet. And then Irvine Unified has decided that they are not going to change their current instructional schedule. Currently, they do have a model. They have a fully virtual model, they have a hybrid model, and then they have a model where students spend half of the day with a teacher, and then they have an optional half-day extended learning time with an aide. So their schedule is still similar to ours, but they do have that optional kind of childcare option at the for the second half of the day. But they are planning on just remaining a half day where the students only have a half day with their actual teacher. So in kind of looking at this and knowing that this was coming, the site administrators and I started to just devise a plan to see if it was in fact feasible for us to be able to allow our students back on campus for a longer day. And so in kind of looking at our schedules and our staffing, we did determine that we could possibly extend the school day. We would need some time to change put the furniture, more furniture in certain classrooms, make sure that we had adequate staffing and any kind of schedule changes that needed to happen. And so if we do decide to move forward with this, we would propose starting on Monday, April 26th. That would leave us with about 8 weeks until the end of the school year from the date that this started. And students would be able to switch from virtual to hybrid if space was available, or again, from hybrid to virtual if they chose to not want to attend the full day because it is a decrease in the space between students. And so I know some parents were okay with the 6 feet, but now are feeling a little bit uneasy about students only being 3 feet apart. But we would still have to continue to meet those 3-foot guidelines. And so the switches would really be dependent on space availability. And we are proposing the in-person instructional day to be from 8:30 to 2:40 p.m. And Fridays remaining virtual because we do have just half days on Fridays that allow our teachers to have their professional learning and planning time in the afternoons and professional development time. So Fridays would remain the same as they are today. So kind of looking at a possible full day schedule for K4. First, just a note that our transitional kindergarten students traditionally have a half-day schedule anyway. And so TK would still remain a half day. It is difficult for our very young students to be on campus all day. And so that's why TK is only a half-day program. So that would remain the same. But for our kindergarten through 4 students, if parents chose to be, or students chose to be part of the on-campus group, They would have their core classes in the morning. So if you kind of look at the schedule here, they periods 1 through 3 from about 8:30 to 10:40. They would have all of their math, ELA, science, social studies. Then they would have a half an hour lunch. It says an hour here because we actually have to stagger the lunch times. And so some students may start lunch at 10:40. Some students may start lunch at 11:10. So it would kind of depend on their grade level and that staggered lunchtime. But all of this time in the morning would be for core instruction and then that lunch break. And then in the afternoon, students would continue with their core in-person instruction. And we would also have some of our non-cores, so music, PE, that would be the times that those students would have those classes as well, again, for our in-person students. And then as far as our virtual students would continue to have their core classes usually in the afternoon and continue to have their non-core classes in the mornings. But part of this schedule and one of the really benefits of this schedule is that it does allow for us to bring back the small group time that we had for students. It did provide teachers time to work with groups of 3 or 4 students, or even individually with students who are struggling, to provide them really more intensive support and help. So this new schedule, both in the afternoons for our in-person students and in the mornings for our virtual students, would provide the opportunity for us to bring back that small group time. And so again, you can see that we could have small groups at least 1 time per student, and then any struggling students 2 times per week, especially for our virtual students who have been receiving less instructional time and will be receiving less instructional time on campus. And then again, for our lunches, just to remain safe and abide by all of the CDC guidelines, students will bring their own lunches. Students who receive free lunch will still be able to pick up those lunches on Monday and Wednesdays. Students, depending on their grade level, will have lunch for 15 minutes at the table or at the lunch tables, and then 15 minutes of play. So we'll be kind of staggering those back and forth to make sure that we only have a small number of students at the lunch tables at a time for safety reasons. So this is kind of what that schedule would look like, possibly for our K-4 students. And then for our 5th through 8th grade students, the schedule will look a little bit different. We didn't feel that live streaming classes for our younger students was effective. And in looking at the research and other districts that have done that throughout the pandemic, for our elementary, especially our primary students, it's not effective for them to live stream into a classroom where teachers are teaching in-person students as well. However, for this schedule for middle school, and because our middle school students or our 5th through 8th grade students are a little bit older and have a little bit more attention span when it comes to being on the computer, we are proposing to live stream for our 5th through 8th grade students. This will allow us to have a lot less schedule changes as well. So for those students, both virtual and on-campus students, they'll have their core classes just like they do now in the mornings. And for 6th through 8th, they'll alternate between days. So one day will be math, like Monday, Wednesday would be math science, Tuesday, Thursday would be ELA social studies, depending on what cohort they're in. For our 5th grade science or students, this would just be with their core teacher in the morning. Then they would have lunch from 11:40 to 12:10. And it's a study hall. That's actually, they'll have playtime out there as well, or socialization time out there as well. And then for our in-person group, they'll go back with their teacher that they see in the morning for that day. And they'll be doing their non-core classes. They might go out to PE if it's their PE time. They may be working on homework. They may be working in small groups with the teacher, working on different projects. That would also be a time for them to take assessments so that we're not taking away from that instructional time in the morning for assessments, working on any kind of remediation through IXL or other programs. And that would also be the same for our virtual students. Our virtual students would just be doing those things virtually. So it would, again, allow for some small group time, some intervention time, as well as students to be able to get help with their homework and all of those other things that that would be able to be provided to students. And then lunch would again be 15 minutes for their lunchtime, and then 15 minutes for their break, so that we could stagger them and alternate between those two groups. So there are some, of course, different pros and cons to each one of these scenarios. So whether we stay the same or whether we switch to this new schedule. So some of the pros of switching, again, are going to be that there is a lot more instructional time for both our hybrid and our virtual students. Also that we're able to provide small group and support time for our students throughout the day. More socialization for our in-person students. Our students can go to PE and participate in physical activity, and also that we would be able to infuse more projects and enrichment activities during those times when the students are not in their core classes, just because of that extended instructional day. Some cons, of course, are that there are some possible schedule changes. The more flexible that families are, like I said, we are going to give that option to families to be able to switch between the two models if they choose on an as space is available basis. And that will hopefully allow us to make as few schedule changes as we possibly can. But there will be changes that we will have to likely make to student schedules in order to make this work. And it's due to a variety of reasons, mainly just the space that we have on campus. Our campuses are full. We utilize every single one of our classrooms, and so we don't have a lot of extra space to put extra classes on campus. And then, just the fact that we do have a lot of students who have remained 100% virtual for the entire school year. And so that impacts our ability to make sure that everyone is staying with their current teacher. But we are going to, if this model is the model that we choose to move forward to, our administration will make every effort possible to try to keep students in their current classes with their current teachers. But again, that could, it could be that if a parent chooses to switch between virtual and hybrid, depending on which one of those their teacher is teaching, then that might make it more likely that they wouldn't need to have a schedule change. But we're going to be putting out a survey later on today for parents to be able to decide for our 100% virtual parents to be able to change to hybrid or in-person based on availability of space. So that's going to be coming out later on today. We're going to actually make the survey live at about 8 o'clock tonight. And then that will go through, I think, the Tuesday after spring break. And it will be on a kind of a first come, first served basis as far as seat availability. So if you do want to possibly have your students switch from virtual to hybrid or in person, please fill out that survey as soon as possible. But some other cons are that there will be more interaction between students. Students will only be 3 feet apart instead of 6 feet apart. The quarantine guidelines are that anyone who comes in contact for more than 15 minutes with somebody within 6 feet does have to quarantine and does have a higher risk of transmitting the COVID-19 virus. So by decreasing that distance between students to 3 feet, it will cause more close contacts if we do have any positive cases on campus. Also, this will limit the ability for students to switch to virtual if they're sick or having to quarantine. One of the big pros of our current program is that if a student is sick or if a student has to quarantine, they can easily switch to the virtual group for the days that they're out and not really miss any instruction. If we do switch this, it does mean that they won't have that ability and they'll have to just get the makeup assignments or homework from their teacher, and they won't be able to continue on with their class. They'll have to make up that work later. Also, really the biggest change is just having so many changes for our students so close to the end of the year. Our students have been through a ton of changes over the last, since we first went out virtual back in last March. And so, with only 2 months left of the school year, this would mean more changes for students. And then also with bringing more students back on campus for a longer day with lunches and recess and things like that, teachers would really have to spend some time going through new routines and new procedures with kids, which would, again, take away from some of that instructional time. So, there really is no perfect option here. We wish that there was a kind of perfect way that we could extend the school day and be able to do it without some of these cons. We'll still being able to provide a virtual option to our families. We don't want to make the schedule changes any more than parents want those schedule changes to happen. Like I said earlier, our teachers know their students. They don't want to have their students go to another teacher, because at this point, with everything that's gone on for the last year, that consistency is really important. And so, it really is kind of weighing those pros and cons, the pros of more instructional time, more support time, small groups, socialization, with the cons of possibly closer contact, possibly more quarantining, and that just possibly having to change schedules for students and that inconsistency. One additional reason why we were really kind of putting out the April 26th date as well is that will give us time for the 10-day quarantine period after spring break. If we do this again, we won't be able to have kids easily switch to the virtual classes while they're quarantining. We know that some families are planning to travel over spring break. And so we want to make sure that this change isn't happening right in the middle of that quarantine period. So that was kind of another thought for why we thought that April 26th, if we did choose this model, would be the best start date, because it would again allow for that 10-day quarantine after spring break. So does the board have any questions?
Amy, I do. This is Danelli. I wanted to see, so in case there's an entire class that needs to be quarantined, say somebody gets sick, they could easily go virtual, correct? Because the whole group did that. You set it up so that we're dynamic. So
yes. So we can definitely, if it's an entire class that needs to quarantine, we would definitely be able to just switch that group of students to be virtual, and the teacher then would be virtual as well, because if it was a whole class, the teacher would also have to quarantine, and we would just switch the class virtual for those 10 days.
And then my second question to you is, if a child does have or is exposed to COVID, would they then go to the school and say, I need what we do if we went on a trip or something like that, where they would do like an extended, I think it's.
Yeah, we would put them on a short-term IS, and then the teacher would provide them work for that time. Right now, the good thing is that they really didn't need to do anything. They just switched to the virtual learning and kind of followed right along with the virtual class with their same teacher. With the short-term IS, then that would be independent study work that the student would do, but we would definitely be able to put them on that IS contract.
So then my other question is if we are live streaming classes anyway, they could just do that if
For
they needed to.
5th through 8th, yeah, for 5th through 8th grade, they would just live stream in, just like the virtual kids. This would be just for K4. They would have to go do more the independent study option.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Dr. Curran, I have actually, this is Paul here. I actually have a couple of comments but no questions per se. Your presentation was pretty thorough. Thank you for that. First of all, I want to thank all the stakeholders. I mean, the staff, the teachers, the parents, the kids. This has been a surreal 12 to 13 months, and we've sort of gone from, oh yeah, everything's fine, to we have to wear masks, to go home and work from home, and we've been very nimble. And I know it hasn't been easy on any of us, for that matter, but I also understand that the teachers and staff here at the front lines of seeing all of these things. So I do want to thank you for that. Also want to thank you. One of the things that we often get compared to larger school districts around us. We get compared to SVUSD or CAPA or IUSD. What everyone don't understand is that the opportunity set that comes from having just 2 campuses is much smaller for us. I mean, IUSD, for example, they may be able to combine classes from different schools and create virtual classes, and therefore you have more teachers to teach in person. We don't have that flexibility because we literally have 3 second grade classes in each campus, right? And so the opportunity set is limited, but the benefit of a school such as us is that we're more nimble. We're able to sort of think quickly and identify those opportunities, which exactly you guys have demonstrated by thinking about this very quickly, working with a cross-functional staff, knowing that this is going to be an incredible amount of work between now and the so-called 26th, if we choose to go that way. But you've identified sort of within that limited opportunity set, you've identified how can we make this happen? And you've sort of laid out the case for us. So thank you for all of that. I really appreciate it. And I want everyone to sort of keep that in mind, that while we get compared to the larger school districts, there are things that we can do, and then there are things that we cannot do, right? And so I really appreciate that. So I feel this is a really fantastic plan. I think all of us, right from middle of last year, have been saying that we all agree that in-person instruction is better, but we were balancing the risks associated with that to sort of the benefit, right? And it looks like you've identified a plan that would help us gain that, but there is of course going to be some sort of a disbenefit, right? There's going to be some parents, and you've already told us that you're going to try your best to give parents that flexibility. Some parents might have kids switch teachers, right? Certainly there's going to be there's a potential for that happening. But I feel that this is a well thought out plan. I know it's going to be a lot of hard work for the staff. I fully understand why we're going into a spring break now. You need time to come back and get the campus ramped up if we choose to do so. And one thing, again, I want everyone to understand is that we're actually going to have kids in class while we're trying to build. So it's like we're flying an airplane while we're trying to fix it as well. So I fully appreciate the complexity, the logistical complexity associated with having kids in class while you're trying to reorganize the classrooms and so on. So I really appreciate that. And so, I know the staff is, you guys have made a lot of sacrifices for the kids, and I appreciate you guys taking, I think it's worthwhile for the children to come back to second grade, third grade, fourth grade, at least for a few weeks, to be able to say, I went to school that year and that I was not entirely out of school, or I was not in a normal school. So thank you, Dr. Kernan, and thank you to the staff.
Hi, Amy. I had just a few questions for you. Is there any concerns around putting 5th through 8th, having it be virtual and in person? What strategies are kind of used to help support both kids in that in the same learning environment, but in different scenarios? How is that going to be really managed or supported for especially our teachers that, now they're trying to deal with 2 different environments and teach at the same time? Can you talk a little bit more about kind of your strategies for that, or what support will be given to the teachers and the students so that neither group feel like they're not getting what they should?
Yeah, so we have purchased some better cameras for those teachers so that they have kind of better webcams to be able to live stream into the classes. Also making sure that the number of students is kept to a more manageable level, both between virtual and hybrid, so that they don't have classes that have more than 30 or so students in there between those 2 groups. And then on top of that, I think that adding into the schedule in the afternoons for those grade levels that are going to be live streaming, that more small group time and one-on-one time for students who might be struggling, as well as some extra, making sure that there's some non-core time where the teachers can do extra planning, are going to help with that live streaming. I think luckily our students have become pretty adept at Zoom, especially in the older grade levels. I think, definitely by necessity, and the same with our staff members. But we do want to make sure that that we are providing time for teachers to really have more interaction with both our virtual students and our in-person students. So during that afternoon time, if some of our virtual students still have questions and they weren't able to ask them in the morning as easily because of the live streaming, then they'll have that extra 3 hours in the afternoon where they can get homework help or help on their assignments from their teachers. They can Zoom in with their teacher and actually have a conversation with that teacher, while the in-person students are maybe doing their non-cores or working on homework or working on different projects. So I think just that flexibility with the schedule in the afternoon for those grade level classes will help to kind of alleviate those issues that may arise with the live streaming.
Thank you. You guys are doing an incredible job, especially with all the changes. I don't know how you guys do it. I did have one other question regarding the same thing. Is normally in the spring, we typically do testing for, and so how is that even going to work this year, with these 2 models in mind?
One thing that we have learned, and I just got kind of final word from Orange County Department of Education this morning, is that we, instead of having, especially our elementary students, have to take instructional time out to take the Smarter Balanced or CASP test in the spring, that takes a very long time, usually 6 to 8 hours. We can use our current assessment system, which is our iReady assessments, that students are already taking. They take it 4 times a year. Most of them have just completed their 3rd benchmark. And we can actually use that data in place of our CASP data. So especially for our elementary students, because they take both the math and ELA iReady assessments, we won't have to take that instructional time away from them for that. And then for our middle school students, because they also take the iReady assessment for ELA, we would just have to do the Smarter Balance test for math, most likely, which is a much shorter test. It only takes the students about an hour and a half. And so because it looks like we are going to be able to use those alternate assessments, that will decrease the amount of instructional time that we're having to take away doing the test. And then we would just, the state is going to basically kind of overhaul our accountability system in light of the fact that we won't have CASP testing results for the next year, and we didn't have them last year. So really, this this year and last year won't be used for accountability for schools.
Thank you.
So Amy,
This is-
while this is, sorry, go ahead.
It's okay, Raymond, go ahead. I'll go after you.
So Amy, you talked about, this, it seems like this is a step in the path toward, normal school again. Some students have been more impacted by other students than, this virtual piece. And so, when Delight said, or Denali rather said something about you at least can say, hey, I didn't have this whole year virtual. At least it would start, one of the benefits I see of this is that it would start the catch-up process for the students who may have been, or aren't as well served by virtual learning, right? So they can come back and start the in-person learning and start that catch-up period now, instead of waiting until next year, where you have a whole year of impact, and then we start the catch-up period there. Is that part of the thinking involved here?
Yeah, so definitely being able to really start providing some of those supports to recoup some of that instructional time and get students back to a full day on campus or full day of on-campus instruction is an added plus if we choose to go to this program. We want to start recouping that time, and we want to start providing more instruction to students as early as we possibly can.
Go ahead, Amy. I'm sorry. Amy Smith.
Thanks. I didn't have any questions either, but I just wanted to share my 2 pennies as well and say thank you to the staff and the students, the parents, as you have pivoted so much throughout the last year. And I appreciate that because of smart decision making, our school has been able to be hybrid when many others have not and are just starting to go back to the hybrid level. So I think that's an important thing to keep in perspective. And for me, it boils down to priorities of learning and safety when it comes to students. So I'm in full support of moving forward with this plan, as long as we can do the expansion safely, we're minimizing the disruption, and then we're maintaining that virtual option for those who want to keep doing that through the end of the semester, which it sounds like all of those things, are being met. So great job. And I look forward to seeing the outcomes of this.
Okay, so just to confirm, Amy, the recommendation of staff, is there a recommendation of staff to move forward with this?
We would just like direction from the board. If the board feels that we should move forward, then with this plan, and the board is in agreement, then you would just need to direct us to implement the plan.
Okay, so the board is in agreement, and we'd like to direct you to move forward with this.
All right, thank you. Then we will put out some more information to families. I know there's a lot of people on the call, but we have 1,000 families. So I'll be creating, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to create a quick video just to kind of outline some of the same things that we did in the board meeting. And we'll send that out to families tonight with the Friday message, as well as that survey for our virtual families to be able to decide whether they'd like to come back for in-person instruction. And thank you to the board for your support of us. I know that it's going to be a lot of, we're going to have some changes. There's going to be some difficult logistical issues, as well as some difficulty for some of our families and some of our students. I want to let everyone know that our staff and our administrators are going to do everything possible to keep students with their current teacher. It may not be possible in all instances, but if we do have to make a change for any students, administration will reach out to those families and then try to give the families some alternatives that will allow them to stay with their same teacher, whether that's moving back to virtual or moving to on campus. But we want to be as flexible as possible, just knowing that we also want to really make sure that we are providing the most in-person instruction for our students as we possibly can. You know, I see both the pros and cons, but I think that you know, we want to try to make sure that we're giving students as much as much catch up and as much increased instruction as we possibly can. You're muted, Raymond.
Thank you. So moving forward then to items for presentation B, we have a presentation from the Executive Director Recruitment Advisory Committee.
Paul, can you pull it up? Do you have ability to do that?
Yep, let me make, Paul, give me just 1 second and I'll make you a co-host. All right, Paul, you can pull it up now. And you're also muted.
Well, first off, I want to give a big shout out to David and Eva in the office. Paul and I could not even begin to get this process done without their behind the scenes work and really helping making sure that all the steps were done in this. And to my and I also want to give a big shout out to Paul, who in a lot of ways he's been co-chairing this with me and really have just made this as seamless as possible. So thank you guys. But this is just an update about our process on what we've done for our executive director recruitment. So there were several steps that have been done. First off, you know, we took a look at applications and kind of over the last 2 months, kind of looked at what we can possibly do to get the best executive director in here. This slide really represents kind of all the final steps involved in it. And I'm going to go a little bit into more detail behind each of these areas. So what was really nice is that we had a wonderful job description that was put together. And then we actually were able to have our job posting on several sites for over 4 weeks. And what was nice about this is we were trying to cast as wide of net as possible to ensure that we had the best possible candidates in the process. And it resulted into 24 candidates for us to consider for the executive director position. We had a very interesting set of resumes to review. And what was nice is that we were able to go through the process of looking at, you know, whether they were really an eligible candidate based on the job description and based on their experience level. We also met and discussed what applicants we did not have consensus on so that we could share kind of our pros and cons of looking at each of those. And then from that, we really selected a top 7 to move forward to an interview process. Then what we were able to do is we were able to enlist every area of our stakeholders to do our first round of panel interviews. And what was really neat about it is we had parents from both campuses, admin from both campuses, certified staff, classified staff, to really kind of highlight all of the key stakeholders. Thanks to David and Paul, they were able to do a training to understand how they were going to do the panel before they actually did the panel interviews. And then they were able to ask a series of questions to every single candidate to make sure that they were thoroughly assessed in their candidacy. And then they actually made a recommendation to have 2 people be selected for the final round of interviews with the board of directors. We actually asked that we actually have the top 4 from the recruiting committee for the final round. And from that, 3 of them actually were in the final round of interviews. So it was great because it had a really diverse group. Some of the topics that were done in the final round of interviews were really looking at, what was their experience level, what was their leadership qualities, what was their different facets of how they would be as a leader, from communication to strategic planning to fundraising, stakeholder engagement and whatnot. And what was nice about it is the board of directors was able to interview these 3 candidates in closed sessions and really look at all the questions consistently to assess who would be the best candidate to be the new executive director for OPA. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Just to reiterate what you said, Delight. First of all, David and Eva, they were invaluable in kind of keeping us straight and giving us guidance on how to think about it, but also allowing us the space to sort of think through such an important decision. The full board that was that sort of trusted us to do some of the early screens, but then they had access to all the applications as well. And then most importantly, the OPA community. I mean, 32 candidates, 32 folks who said they want to come and interview. We picked 14. We had to say no to several people. Again, not because they were not qualified, but because we just didn't have more space for more than 14 who did the first round panel. Certainly, we have your information, and hopefully we'll be able to continue having your engagement on several topics. But I strongly feel that after sort of a 6-week process, I feel satisfied that our board, I mean, at least me personally as a board member, which we believe that this is one of the most important decisions that we would make as a board, and I feel confident that we've picked the best candidate that's possible for OPA. So thanks again to everybody.
I think that's it, Raymond.
Well, I would just like to recognize you both for taking the lead on this. This is an incredible undertaking, and the rigor that goes into this to make sure that it's fair, make sure it's equitable, make sure that we are looking at every possible candidate. You guys have done an incredible job and a ton of time to make this happen. And I appreciate you both immensely driving this thing forward, being as transparent and open and super, I love this presentation that you put together to share with the community about, how you came up with a plan and how we rolled this plan out. And it was really a great process. So I appreciate you both a great deal. So that leads us to items for action. I have a little blurb to read here regarding action item A, approval of the employment agreement for the executive director. So as required by law, as to the approval of the employment agreement for the executive director, I am required to indicate prior to any vote on the employment agreement that all compensation amounts to be paid to the executive director per the employment agreement is as follows. 1, a base annual salary of $215,000, eligibility for an annual performance-based salary increase of 5%, health benefits, sick leave, vacation leave, life insurance coverage as is provided to other school employees has a value of $38,756.01. And then a professional dues membership allowance of $1,500 per year. I would also note that the annual salary is wholly in keeping with the compensation comparability study that the board received and reviewed previously. So that leads us to item for action A, approval of the employment agreement for executive director.
I'll move to approve action item A.
Second.
Thank you very much, Amy. May I have a second? I'm sorry, was that you, Delight?
Yep.
Thank you, Delight. And then we'll have a roll call vote.
Raymond, sorry, one question. Are we not announcing the person who got selected here, or is that's what happened elsewhere?
I think that's after.
Oh, after. Okay, got it. Sorry, my bad.
So then we'll do a roll call vote. So Denelli,
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Amy Smith,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and Delight.
Aye.
Okay. So the board has appointed Dr. Amy Kernan as the new executive director. So we go, oh, yeah, yay. Okay,
Can Amy say a couple words?
yes, please, Amy, Dr. Amy.
Everybody's
Dr.
probably tired of listening to me today, but but thank you so much to the board and to all of the stakeholders who are involved in the process, and just to really everybody here at OPA. It's been an amazing, a little bit crazy, but amazing 2.5 years since I joined OPA. We've done some really incredible things at both of our school campuses. I've had the pleasure to work with the most incredible staff that I have ever worked with, incredible families and students, and just it's such an exciting time for us to be looking forward now to all of the incredible things that we're going to be able to do in the future. We have all of the right staff in place. We have incredibly supportive parents and just amazing champions. So we're completely positioned to really be able to come out of this crazy year and just be able to, the sky's the limit, just be able to continue to achieve and excel and do great things. So I'm really excited to be able to lead OPA into our next adventure and just really continue moving the organization forward. And thank you to everyone.
All right. Thank you for everybody involved. Jill, David, Delight, Paul, Amy, Denelli, thank you so much. Congratulations, Dr. Amy. Yay.
Thank
On to
you.
super exciting things. So adjournment, item number 8. It's recommended that the board adjourn the regular meeting of the Oxford Preparatory Board of Academy Board of Directors on April 2nd, 2021. May I have a motion, pretty please?
I make a motion to adjourn our board of directors meeting.
Thank you, Paul. In a second.
A second.
Thank you, Denelli. Roll call, Denelli,
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Paul,
Aye.
Amy Smith,
Aye.
and Delight Travis.
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 2:17 p.m. Thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Amy.
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Wah, wah, wah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Woo!
Hey, somebody just did an awesome woohoo. Who did that? Was
I
that you,
know.
Jill?
No,
That
it
was,
wasn't.
that was the school nurse celebrating.
I
Woo!
love it. That's awesome.
Thank you.